The 1991 TV miniseries Golden Years is honestly indefensible. It's not the worst Stephen King TV series out there by most metrics, but if ever there was a time that King could be accused of self-parody or lazily regurgitating his previous work, Golden Years is it. Hi there, I'm your host, Mrs. Doyle, and this is a great undertaking. That's right, I'm a woman now, and definitely not Mr. Doyle's younger, more attractive spouse that he is exploiting in an effort to get more views and subscribers. Nope, definitely not that. And if you're interested in mind-numbingly boring, derivative early 90s TV series, Stephen King's and hot chicks with librarian glasses, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. To be clear, my husband wrote this script, and I'm not the egomaniac that he's making me out to be. Today we're going to be taking a look at Golden Years, a show that's best quality is its opening credits, solely due to the fact that the David Bowie song of the same name was used as the show's theme music. In this house, we stand hard for Bowie, but even his otherworldly majesty couldn't save this absolute slog of a TV series. Fortunately, the series was canceled after 7 episodes, but that still left us with 4 hours of what could be best described as the least thrilling thriller King or anyone has ever written. So let's take a look at the series of events that led up to the production. What story King self-plagiarized from when he wrote the screenplay, and why it's the most boring of all the TV series we've covered on this channel so far. But first, here's a short recap of the show for anyone unfamiliar.
Golden Years, a brief summary. An elderly janitor named Harlan Williams gets caught up in a science experiment gone wrong, which nearly kills him, but it also causes him to develop an odd ability. He slowly begins to get younger. His eyesight improves, his hair begins to turn from white back to its previous color, the wrinkles fade from his face. Williams and his unusual de-aging bring him some unwanted attention from a top-secret government organization, and he's forced to go on the lam with a sympathetic government official and his elderly wife. A manhunt ensues which sees Williams and his accomplices go on an interstate escape in a stolen hearse in an effort to evade those who seek to capture Williams and will likely kill his wife and their co-conspirators. One agent in particular, Jude Andrews, is hell-bent on bringing them in, and he becomes more menacing and erratic in his tactics the longer the chase goes on. Additionally, we begin to learn that Williams has seemingly developed symptoms other than getting younger, which include glowing green and possibly turning back time itself. However, Williams is not aware of or able to control these unforeseen abilities. Eventually, Andrews and his posse catch up to Williams. There's a firefight, a final chase, and when Andrews finally catches up to Williams and his wife, they slip through his fingers before the series comes to a sudden, incomplete end. History and background.
Golden Years was created, written, and executive produced by Stephen King himself, along with developer and co-writer Joseph Anderson. Anderson's filmography is slim, but includes producer credits in 90s TV shows Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman and Sliders. There were 4 different directors who worked on the series' 7 episodes, none of which are noteworthy or interesting enough to bother discussing in this video, so I won't. The cast was made up of a handful of recognizable actors and actresses, including Felicity Huffman, who is best known for her role in the early to mid-2000s TV drama Desperate Housewives, and for her involvement with a nationwide and for her involvement with a nationwide college entrance exam cheating scandal for which she was sentenced to 14 days in prison, a $30,000 fine, and 250 hours of community service, and 1 year's supervised release. She crushed it in that role. Very believable performance. Such a girl boss. In addition to Huffman, there was Frances Sternhagen, who had been in countless movies and TV shows starting in 1967, and was also in 2 other King screen adaptations, both Misery and The Mist. The lead role of Harlan Williams was played by Keith Shikabashkaka, which is a name I'm going to be saying a lot in this upcoming paragraph, because my husband just wants to hear me attempt to say his name a bunch of times. Shikabashkaka has an impressive list of film and credits, as well as a huge number of voice acting credits in cartoons and video games. Shikabashkaka worked on everything from The Dark Knight, Archer, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Angry Beavers, X-Files, ER, Dead Space, Call of Duty, Fallout, Halo, just to name a few. Damn you, Doyle! And finally, there's R.D. Call, who played the maniac agent Jude Andrews. Call has a reasonably lengthy filmography, but it's mostly made up of more obscure, lesser-known projects. That being said, Call was an excellent casting choice, and he plays the role of calculated madman very well. All of these guys were in the show too, but unlike the TV series Golden Years, I won't bore you with all the unnecessary details. Anyway, the majority of the acting in the show was pretty good. So when I complain about the show being too long and boring, it's not the fault of the cast. As for the special effects, there were blessedly few, but when they do employ them, they're pretty bad. And yeah, I know, they were likely working on a shoestring budget and did the best they could, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. The soundtrack is painfully cheesy and entirely synth-based, which I don't personally take offense to, but since my husband is writing this, I'm being instructed to say that it's consistently trash and sounds like dookie-encrusted corkscrew duck penis. Which, if you weren't aware, ducks do in fact have corkscrew-shaped penises. You're welcome. There is of course one exception, that being the previously mentioned David Bowie track Golden Years, being used as the show's main song. But if you watch the 4-hour consolidated season, which appears to be the only way to watch it these days, you hear the song once, at the very beginning, and never again during the course of the following 4 hours. Stephen King claims that it was thanks to the cult classic Twin Peaks that made it possible for Golden Years to make it on air. He once told the New York Times, quote, "Up until Twin Peaks came on, the only sort of continuing drama that TV understood was soap opera, Dallas, Knots Landing, that sort of thing. To some degree, David Lynch gave them that. But he turned the whole idea of that continuing soap opera inside out like a sock. If you think of Twin Peaks as a man, it's a man in delirium, a man spouting stream of consciousness stuff. Golden Years is like Twin Peaks without the delirium," unquote. And I hate to say it, but comparing Golden Years to Twin Peaks? Really, Steve? That's like saying Twin Peaks walked so that Golden Years could shamble around in a circle before collapsing onto the ground, convulsing hopelessly until it died. I'm not the biggest fan of Twin Peaks, but if Golden Years is like Twin Peaks without the delirium, it would appear that the delirium was the secret ingredient that gave Peaks the cult status, while Golden Years was canceled and left on a cliffhanger, never to be concluded. Apparently, the home video release had a different ending than the original broadcast, but I have no idea whether I watched the original ending or the edit. If for whatever reason you want to watch Golden Years, you can buy it on Vudu for $5. But I promise, there are better uses for both your money and your time.
That's not how the sun works. Golden Years makes some questionable decisions that just defy all logic and science. And that's fine, this is science fiction after all, but there was one moment in particular that was utterly ridiculous and also entirely pointless. Harlan's powers, which, while they were not fully explored during the 4-hour runtime, seemingly include turning back time. At one point while sleeping, Williams causes the sun to re-rise in the sky, which leads to people coming to a dead stop on the highway in awe of the fact that the sun is somehow back up in the sky. They're astounded and awestruck by what appears to be the sun defying the passage of time. But here's the thing. Williams is in Illinois at this point on his way to meet his wife and Felicity Huffman in Chicago. So the sun is now in the sky in the state of Illinois, but in the very next scene, which takes place in Chicago, a city in Illinois, presumably at the same time as the sun re-rising, but it's still dark. There is no sun. Was the sun only visible to those in Williams' close proximity? And was it only illuminating the immediate vicinity in which Williams was located? That's not how the sun works. This phenomenon would have been visible for most, if not all, of the United States, and no one ever mentions it again. There's no worldwide attention brought to this freak occurrence. And after this instance, nothing like this happens again for the rest of the show. He made the sun come back up, and it doesn't matter at all. It could have been left out of the show completely, and it wouldn't have made a lick of difference. And that's not to mention the cosmic consequences that would likely occur should the sun just move backwards at an astounding rate of speed. We see the sun rocket back up into the sky in a matter of seconds. And I mean, with the trajectory and orbit of all the planets being inextricably linked to the sun, it begs the question, what would that do to everything else that hangs in the delicate, intricate balance? Unless whatever Williams unwittingly does to the sun also causes the entirety of the cosmos to perform some synchronized rewind, which would imply that Williams has the power of some sort of god. And keep in mind, up until this point, the only thing Williams has done is become slightly less visibly aged. Now he suddenly moves the center of our solar system and potentially the entirety of our universe during a nap. Talk about abruptly raising the stakes. And all because he got caught up in an ill-fated science experiment, the goal of which is not at any point actually explained or mentioned at all.
Stephen King rips himself off. Alright, so the shadowy government organization that is hunting down Williams is the Shop, which of course is the same sinister force that was after Charlie and Andy McGee in Firestarter. And that's cool. But Golden Years is just Firestarter with extra steps. Only instead of a pyrokinetic child, we have an old guy who slowly de-ages. And instead of John Rainbird, King gives us Jude Andrews, both trained killers who work for the Shop, are feared by all who know them, and lead the charge in bringing the escapee back for further experiments and examinations. But the majority of the show is the Shop chasing after Williams. Williams hiding out, Williams on the run, Williams in disguise, seeking refuge, etc. Eventually culminating in a big showdown which the guilty and innocent alike are indiscriminately slaughtered. Sound familiar? It's so close to being the same plot as Firestarter that I can't help but wonder why King didn't just make a Firestarter series. We talked about King self-plagiarizing in previous videos and typically are able to defend King's repurposing of characters, themes, and tropes. But this is the first time we couldn't reasonably justify his revisiting a previously explored idea or theme, at least to some extent. Golden Years is just Firestarter's older, slower-paced grandpa, and every minute feels like an hour. Golden Years is the "we have Firestarter at home" to Firestarter, which, to be fair, wasn't necessarily a fantastic film to begin with. So Golden Years is a worse version of Firestarter, a film that was just okay. Thanks, Steve. I hate it.
Final thoughts. Golden Years feels more like a misguided attempt to revisit a familiar story than it does an effort to give the audience something new and exciting. I'd honestly rather rewatch the Tommyknockers than watch Golden Years again, and that's not something I thought I would say. Tommyknockers was a lot of things, but I don't know that I would call it boring. And for me, Golden Years was mostly that. It had a competent enough cast, but that's really all it had going for it, if you ask me. Watch it at your own risk, but don't say we didn't warn you.
In the next video, we'll be returning to King's magnum opus, The Dark Tower, and taking a look into the third installment of the series, The Wastelands. It's probably gonna get weird. And Mr. Doyle promised he wouldn't talk about racial stereotypes or drug addiction this time, so all you anti-SJW types can just calm down.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks to all of my subs and constant commenters for leaving your thoughts in the comments sections of all of my videos. I appreciate your time and your contributions to this channel. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Okay, goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty pleased with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking.